Hi, everyone, and welcome to Forest.chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode, we'll be talking with Damian Porter about being a Special Forces operator, self-defence teacher, and creating How Not to Die Guy. Damian has been professionally involved in the health and wellness space for over 28 years. He has a passion to coach you to live your greatest life in a body you love and trust to perform. He's a career firefighter, a champion national bodybuilder, exercise rehabilitation physiologist, that's a tongue twister, and one of the first personal trainers in the world. He's also a former New Zealand Special Forces operator and Australian police officer, with years of experience in life-threatening and low-threat environments. Welcome to the Forest.chat podcast, Damian.
Thank you, Paul. Great to be here. Looking forward to our chat.
So, Damian, the world of Special Forces operators and self-defence, there's quite a lot goes on there. Can you give us a brief overview of where it is you sit within all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'm a veteran now is exactly where I sit. I served 10 years in the New Zealand Army. I served 3 years in the New Zealand Special Forces. The New Zealand SAS counter-terrorist team is what I was in, and they reformed to commandos. I entered that in 2005 is when I passed my selection course for that. And as you said in the bio, I'm a current career firefighter. So I left along with three other New Zealand SAS. They were badged operators, where I was in the counter-terrorist team, and we came to Western Australia. And we moved here in 2009. I went on to become a police officer for a couple of years and then became a firefighter. But I've taught self-defense, and it's really air quotes self-defense, for 23 years now. What it really is, Paul, is the unarmed and armed combat we were taught in the military, and specifically in the Special Forces. I actually did the course in the regular military, and I did it again in the Special Forces at a much higher level. So I teach civilians what we learn in the military to keep themselves safe. And the catchphrase I use is, I teach good people how to stop bad people from doing bad things. And I love it. I really do. In America, veterans like me would be on the gun. They'd be out there and showing everybody how to use that for their self-defense. And so they should get, that's a right in the USA. It's in the Constitution. It's a God-given right. Unfortunately, here in Australia, there's no right to self-defense. And listeners, you don't have a legal right to self-defense in most Commonwealth countries. So I teach people how to keep themselves safe, and also how to use the lawful use of that under Western Australia and Australian law.
That's very interesting. I saw you on a snippet on social media talking about how there is no right to self-defense. People think that they have a right to actually do that. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just literally thinking there, you've got a right of way when you drive a car, depending on what the road law is or the Road Traffic Act is in your country. Here in Western Australia, self-defense is a legal defense in court to doing a harmful act to someone else, either in self-defense of yourself or self-defense of another. But it's a legal argument in court to doing a harmful act. That harmful act could be assault, could be AOBH, GBH, or could be, unfortunately, taking someone's life in self-defense. But it's not a right, a legal right. However, as I said, in America, they have under the Constitution, it's written that they have a God-given right to self-defense. And in some states, they even have a right to self-defense of their home. I think it's called castle doctrine. Some even have a stand your ground clause. So if you're in the street. Over here in Western Australia, an example would be there was a hostage situation in Kensington about 7 years ago. I actually know the police officers that was involved. And there was a man with a knife to a throat of a female. That offender was surrounded by 7 police officers, all screaming, and you should only ever say this once, Paul, put the knife down or I'll shoot. You only give a warning once, because then once you've given it twice, the person won't believe you. Um, and those police officers did have to pull the trigger, which they're absolute heroes for. And the father of the offender said they did the right thing. Those police officers were immediately arrested on suspicion of murder by from orders by Carlo Callahan. And even though they were doing their job and they were excused by law to use force, they were arrested on suspicion of murder pending the investigation. And that was in self-defense of another. You don't have a right as a cop to go around uh, pulling triggers, but you do have the right to defend another human. That's what we do in police. So there's no right to self-defense. It's simply a lawful defense in court that'll be judged by the magistrate or the judge, depending on what level of court you're at. And that's where people might get a bit confused, is a reasonable use of force to overcome the force used. So it has to be reasonable in the circumstances that you believe them, listeners, to be. So me, I'm a former special forces operator. Paul, you're a male. You and I, if we're fighting, I probably couldn't think that I was at risk of a lot of harm to you. But if I was a 50-kilo female, you seem like a big guy just on the camera there, I could be at risk. So in the circumstances that you believe them to be, the force is reasonable to use. And I think that's an eye-opener for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just that you're automatically going to get off. You actually have to argue your case, and at the time you need to be thinking about, what is reasonable to do. You can't just go and do something that you think is high impact, that'll actually, injure someone and incapacitate them and that sort of thing, if that situation doesn't warrant it, or you can't explain that it's warranted.
You're exactly right. And this is where the Americans also go wrong. I love my USA people, and I love being a professional behind a trigger as well. But so often with the social media, they'll say, "Oh, I'll just." That's why we have the Second Amendment. That's why I always carry. They too, even though there's a right to self-defense, they don't have a right to go around murdering people. That has to be reasonable force still in their country, in the circumstances. It has to be reasonable force. So that's really what it comes down to, and that's why I teach what I do. I don't teach sport, Paul. I teach unarmed combat, which was taught to us in the special forces, and it originated around World War II with the original uh, spies that went behind enemy lines, the original commandos, and it works. And it doesn't take a lot of skill. And the listeners, given this as an Australian podcast, may be familiar with a heroine called Nancy Wake. Nancy Wake was a 20-something-year-old New Zealand female who immigrated to Australia and then lived in France. She was a beautiful socialite, and she went behind enemy lines in France, and Hitler named her the most dangerous female in Europe. She dispatched Nazis with her bare hands, and she's not a BJJ expert, but she sure knew how to handle herself with that low level of skill.
Yeah, you hope you never get into those situations, but people go traveling, and there are some people who are out to do weird stuff that potentially don't even have control of themselves. So knowing how to look after yourself in that situation and not get yourself into more strife afterwards, or strife that you can't handle afterwards, it sounds like a very valuable thing to be learning.
It really is, and you nailed it there, Paul. You shouldn't get in those situations. Sometimes you can't help it. Literally outside my house, I had to help police arrest a guy. Violence can just come upon you. But I interviewed a woman today, Lindsay Graham, the Patriot Barbie she is on Instagram, and she did a 2-day course shooting and running and gunning and all the hands on. But that course saved her life with situational awareness at the airport. Coming off the airport, going to her car, she noticed something was not right with one of these guys. And this guy was highly likely targeting her for trafficking. He was likely the spotter in America, and likely that he had accomplices to have a vehicle to grab her before she went to her car. And that situation awareness, not the trigger time she did, the 2 days of the combatives, that situation awareness saved her life. So you're so right, and that's where it comes. That's not. I use BJJ because it's so popular, but those sports are great. They're amazing. I have so much respect for those people, but that's not self-defense. That's a sport. That's not learning how to see and read your environment.
Yes, situational awareness. I originally had planned to go into the Air Force. It never happened, but one of the things that was talked about was situational awareness. And, you also talk about it in driving instruction and that sort of thing as well. So it's very, very important. But obviously, you're looking for different keys, different indicators.
Exactly. Just what doesn't feel right, what's off, and then listening to that. And so many females, Paul, they dismiss that. They want to be polite. Something felt off, but I didn't want to, be rude, or something felt off, but I didn't want to be, make myself feel foolish.
Yes. And hopefully they get through it.
Yeah. Well, hope's not a course of action, so you got to learn.
Good point. Good point. So there's quite a big, wide world out there. There's a lot of things that people can be taken down by. Damien, what did it take you to become a special forces operator and then to go on and train people to defend themselves?
The second part's easy. It's just using my skills and teaching good people. I'm a fairly natural teacher. I enjoy it. I enjoy the comprehension you learn as a teacher, as an instructor. The first part's the hard part, the getting there. Um, yeah, for someone to become a special forces operator, you have to want nothing else than that in your whole life, and that's your sole focus. I don't know if those words come across as important as I say them, but that's your sole focus in life, to become a special force operator and pass that selection course. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of physical things out there, a lot of fitter guys than me and smarter guys than me, but at that time I wanted it that much that I made it through.
So you had some motivational drive behind you, clearly, to make that happen.
Yeah, motivation to train. I mean, it's years of training. To go through a special force selection course is one of the hardest things you'll ever do, and then being in the unit, you'll do even harder things. But it's a mental game. So as I said, on the selection courses, people that are far fitter than me and far stronger than me and far bigger and faster, but many of them failed, and they don't have the mental toughness. I didn't know I had the mental toughness. I found out by passing it, but it's the mental toughness there that gets you through, and it's the motive. You said motivation. It's motivation each step of the way, and literally sometimes each step of your foot. Some of the things we do in selection are horrible, and you've just got to think one foot in front of the other, and that's going to end up being however many seconds are in 24 hours, and you've managed to get through one more day.
I really can't imagine the sort of things that you may have had to go through, but what did you do in the lead up to prepare yourself?
That's a great question. I was prepared and slightly over prepared, and I tell people that ask me for advice to be over prepared. I think I did that in a lecture once, a while back. So one of the things that I knew, our selection process was unknown. The New Zealand SAS and most of the SAS selection courses are fairly well known, but we were formed in 2005 as a counter-terrorist team for New Zealand SAS, and that was because a lot of the operators were going overseas as contractors, so they're losing men. So they brought us on board just to do that one role of special forces. So we're the guys in black doing hostage rescue. I've said counter-terrorist a few times, but our role was hostage rescue. And that selection course was brand new. And I knew snippets of it. We all had heard snippets of it. But what I trained for was the first day, Paul, because if you can't get through day one, you can't get through day 5, day 6, and so on. So we thought we knew what the first day was. So I'll tell you what that involved. The first one is a 2.4K run under 10 minutes. Now, that's a standard army test, but that's all you got to do on the day in the standard army. That's just the first thing in the Special Forces first day. Then the second thing is a swim test. I think in full kit and in 7 laps of maybe 300 meters. I'm not sure exactly what that is now. It's a few years ago, but a full swim test, quite hard. And normally, again, a standalone test in the army. You don't run it 16 k's an hour as hard as you can before that, and then you go on to the next test, which is wearing body armor and having a 40-kilo pack, and you got to run. We thought it was 12Ks in about an hour 50. So it's about a 9-10K an hour pace. It's fairly decent pace, and then you've got to do another run, probably a 12K run on your feet, just without your pack and without your 40 kilos of gear. And what I would do, Paul, to answer your question, is I would go out and do that. A lot of people make the mistake of doing the 2.4K run in one day. Yep, got that. Brilliant. I can have some food, go home and rest. I did it all back to back to back. And I'd do that and I'd beat those times and I'd do it in a slightly more weight than I thought was going to be there and slightly harder conditions. And that prepared me to get through that first day. And that's all I prepared for, Paul, because I didn't know what else was coming.
And you can't prepare for what you don't know about at all.
Exactly. You just got to, and that's the point of special forces. We would do the best we could with what we got where we were, and it's the ability to adapt and overcome. And then that's maybe an overused term nowadays. I hope it's not. We would just nothing goes right when you're doing the job. As like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. I remember one time we were in the kill house. The kill house is where we have. We always use live rounds, but we use live explosives. We blow through doors, we blow through walls, and we go in and shoot targets of terrorists. And a lot of the time we have live humans in there as hostages. Well, we had a new physical training instructor, quite a cheeky guy. He'd come up and he said he wanted to find out what we did. So the sergeant put him in the kill house. And I'll never forget, I'd blown through this door, and behind that door was just a massive junk that I fell over. It didn't look cool. I fell through that massive pile of junk, rolled onto my knee, looked up, and I saw two terrorist targets and Scotty sitting there right in the middle, and just bang, 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 bang on the terrorists' faces and right past Scotty's head, literally this 6 inches away. And it never looks cool, and everything can go wrong. And I just rolled with it. I've never practiced that before. He just overcame it. And my mate behind me, my cover, was doing the same thing. He was like, probably would have never comprehended he saw me in front of him falling over and rolling. But you just roll with it because nothing ever goes right. So that is what selection is about, is trying to prepare you for what you're going to see in battle.
Yeah, that's impressive to be able to do that. I interviewed another person who'd spent some time in the police force and then went into high-level sport, and they talked about having to perform in situations that are not normal, high stress, or high, what's the terminology for it? There's a high impact, high risk. Yeah. How did you go with that sort of thing? Like, how do you prepare for that?
Training and exposure. Like I said, tongue in cheek, BJJ teaches you to wrestle humans on the ground. It doesn't teach you high stress when you go into your car and you got three crackheads there. It doesn't teach you that exposure to that. And we're exposed over and over in our training to become a special forces operator, and then exposure every day. We would, my first time going to the kill house, I remember I was so nervous and you're freaking out. And then later on, a couple of years later, it's just we're having a joke like this, and then you hear the stand by, go, and you're through the door and it's game face on. And it's just exposure to higher and higher levels of stress. But I can give you one example that will maybe make it right for the listeners, Paul. On one of my training courses, and the guy is famous, Willie Arpiata. He won the VC, the Victoria Cross, for New Zealand SAS in Afghanistan. We're doing one of our courses, which was high-rise courses. We were inside a high-rise building, the highest one in New Zealand, I think it was, and we're doing some work in elevator shafts. And the elevator's down the bottom. We're about 20 stories up, and we look down, and it's a long way down. And I won't say what we got to do tactically, but had to basically descend down something in this shaft. He had to reach out. And then grab this thing. And Willie looks at me. He goes, actually, it might have been Willie's offsider. Willie was there with this other guy, and he looks at me and goes, Porter, do you know what you're doing? I said, yes, staff. And he looked at me square in the eye, Paul, and he said, You do know if you don't do this right, you will die. I just say, yes, staff. Reach out, grab the thing, and I don't die. But that's the pressure you put under. And it was self imposed because I could have said, no, I'm not doing that. Um, but you've got to take that risk and choose the right decision at the right time.
And the only way to get there is through all of that practice that you were talking about.
Only way. Only way.
So people can do some absolutely amazing stuff with enough practice, the right sort of practice.
If they're the right people, the selection is about getting through that, and then the commanding officer of One New Zealand SAS says you've been selected for further training. You're good enough to go and be trained. That's all it is. Not that you're going to be an SF operator after that selection course. It's that you're suitable for further training. So someone without that right mindset will fail. They'll be a liability to themselves and to others.
So being a special forces operator is extremely high stress and high reward. It's quite amazing that you can take that and apply it into the real world in situations where you may be under threat. And that's something that Damian has done a lot of. So it's great to hear about that. Now let's go and have a break. And after that, we'll look at what it means to be able to do this. Damian, we've talked about what it takes to be a special forces operator and to get you to the point that you can train people to do that sort of thing. What does it mean to you, your family, or the community that you're able to operate at those levels?
Thank you for that question, Paul. For the community, that was our job. We were told we're the ones the Prime Minister calls when it's all gone wrong. Normal people here call 000, but we're the ones that the police and the Prime Minister calls when it's all gone to porridge. So for the community, that was our job to ultimately keep the community safe. To the family, I didn't have a family at that time, and I'm sure as hell happy that I didn't. I do firmly believe that for the majority of people, that's a single man's job because it goes literally mission first, unit second, country third, and family last. And I'm aggressive when I say that because that's what it takes to go through that door and know there's bad guys on the other side. They're going to put lead down your way. And our job was to rescue the hostages. We're not doing it to go and shoot bad guys. We're doing it to rescue good people or innocent people. They may not be good. But to me, it was, I don't think any special forces operator would say anything different. It was one of the best times of my life. It was my purpose at the time. Transitioning out of that, as Nick Caldwell from the Mill Gym here in Western Australia said, transitioning out of the military, out of the special forces into what you said, Paul, into the real world. I mean, that's a point of contention, perhaps. He said it was harder than war. So to go from that alien environment back into the civilian world, it's tough, and you have to change your identity. But that was my purpose, and that was my identity, and it was everything that I wanted. So it means the world to me, and I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for New Zealand SAS for making me the man I am now. I couldn't have got into police how easily I did, and got in the fire brigade and being able to be in the position I am. How not to die guy, having the ability to interview the people I do and have people respect the skills that I show without having done that. And I often say thank you to them because the unit made me who I was.
Yes, it's literally all consuming.
Truthfully, yes. Yes, it is. And that's the way it's got to be.
So, with the work that you do now to help people in the community to protect themselves, have you got some examples of how that has been working in real life?
Yeah.
After your previous comment, maybe let's not say real life. Maybe let's say
Yeah.
out in the world we experience.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Look, one of the I mean, I've taught it for a long time. And one of the city councils, I won't say who it is for privacy, one of the city councils brought me on board about it a fair while ago to train their elderly community. And it was beautiful. I had about 20 to 24 people in there, aged 60 to 84. There's an 84-year-old and 81-year-old. They were a couple, 84-year-old male. And they were the best students I've ever had out of the whole time. And I've had, models and athletes and, literally New Zealand and national athletes and other people and some experts of what they do sport-wise. But these people were awesome because they realized how important it was. And it was great. And we also had to adapt. Some people got injuries, and that, again, that's what we're taught in the military. Well, you can't use left arm because it's injured, whatever, you've got to be able to then carry on. So they were great. And I was lucky enough to be invited back to teach them, and they gave me some examples of, their situation awareness had saved them. One example I can give directly that I know saved someone's life. I get a message like that probably once a week, either at mental health or self-defense. I did a video once, Paul, about your garage door. Many people have a garage door, and then inside their garage is an internal door to their house. The most flimsy door and the most flimsy lock. So please change that if you're listening. I've been guilty of it because I wasn't used to that automatic closing door. You must watch that garage door go all the way to the ground, either leaving, but more importantly, you've driven into your house. And I did a short video on that on Instagram, only a minute, because sometimes it can bounce up. Sometimes there's something in the way, an obstacle in the way, it's a fault in it, but sometimes it bounces up and then you're just left with it. Well, this guy messaged me from America. He said, Damian, your video saved my life. He said, I watched that all the way to the ground, and then when I went inside, I saw in my security camera, guys are running at the garage door. They were trying to beat it down, and they had guns on the other side. He went and got his long gun, and he was inside the garage pointing the long gun at them, and they left. It was too much trouble. Their obstacle wasn't in their plan. Their plan was to get under that door, to bump it, to stop it from going all the way down and get inside his house and home invasion and do whatever. They had guns, so is it a threat or is it actually going to cause injury or death to him? So that's an example of it, and that's just from a reel. And that's the difference I've done in the last year of creating How Not to Die, guys, putting information out there for free that anybody can see or use. And if it can help someone, great, because why hold it in? So that's a couple of examples of how that's helped the community, and not just Western Australia community, Paul. It's worldwide, and that's the pro, I guess, of social media. You've got a massive reach.
Yes, you definitely can get anywhere in the world, in effect, and sometimes you don't even know you've got there. Things go second or third hand, or they get shared, or even people just tell other people about it. So it's the reach can be far more than you expect.
So true.
I understand about the fear that older people have. I mean, my mum's recently turned 92. I've joined the senior citizens down here in Australind. Apparently, I'm 10 years too late, so, so the bar for entry is not too high. And there's people there who are that I meet up with, and they're frail. They're getting around on walkers. They're just getting to the shops and back. For them it's an outing, but they're traversing stuff where they're not very agile on their feet, and they probably quite rightly see themselves as easy targets.
Rightly so, and well done on the bad guys. They should choose those people. They really should. If they're doing their job right, the bad guys. However, on the other side, let's get those elderly people skilled up a little bit. Use that walker as a weapon. Use your cane. Go and buy a cane that's made to be used as a tool. And I say that word tool with, air quotes. So it not only holds you up, but you can use it against a bad guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Whole range of different scenarios that could come up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there are definitely lots of very good ways that being a special forces operator and sharing your knowledge about how people can become situationally aware and protect themselves is very meaningful in society, Damian. So you're doing excellent work there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I've got an example from the other day. I think on Friday, today's Tuesday, if I got it right. I was driving home, and I came across a car crash. And I've said to people, I've used the trauma kit and the first aid kit in my car 10 times. I've never used the tools in my car once against violence. So you come across car crashes a lot. This was a car versus a tree. And there was another car that stopped, and it looked like two females. The female driver in the car that was injured, that was damaged, was being helped by another female. I just pulled up and said, "Is anybody injured?" And the helper, the good Samaritan, sort of shook her head. The driver of the car was kicking off, either mentally disturbed or drug affected, and I'm going to go drug affected. Absolutely kicking off. Airbag had gone off, and she was just, "I don't need to be here. I'm going to drive away." She's going crazy, right? 9:30 in the morning on a Friday. I thought, okay, no first aid, no problem. I drove around the corner. I just clicked on and went, just wait a little bit. Just turn around and just park off so she can't, she's not right there. I'm not going to get her attention. She's not going to even see me, and she's not going to get more agitated. So I just parked up there, and I watched these women with prams, mums, 9:30 walking the bubs. They were walking past, and this woman's screaming now. She's the trees are in the middle of the road. So obviously she was on drugs to be able to hit it, and she's causing a lot of disturbance. And passers-bys, females always want to help another female. They were starting to get involved, and I was like, okay, this isn't going to go well. So I called police instead of getting out and me grabbing her, and I could have cuffed her up, and no problem. I could have done a citizen arrest, no problem at all, lawfully. I just called the police, said this is what's gone on. 3 minutes later, they turned up, which is amazing. Normally, when seconds count, police are minutes away. And long story short, yep, she got locked up about 15 minutes later, and there was grandparents with their grandkids walking past and so on. If I hadn't have done that, Paul, I don't know what would have happened, but I know there would have been a lot of trauma caused to little kids. There was some toddlers there that the mums had to explain it to, but it could have been worse than when the police were there. So that wasn't my hands-on skills. I didn't have to go and choke her out and cuff her up or anything like that. I just pulled back a fair way in my car. I'm in a big metal box and goes 100 k's an hour. It's a very handy tool, and I just was there to keep others safe in case it kicked off at them. And then we got help on the way. So uh, that was my. We talked it before the break about level of high stress. When you've been trained in high stress, you can bring that down really easy and make really clear decisions, and that did help others. It was really cool to be able to do that, and nobody got hurt.
Oh, absolutely. That's an excellent example of using what you have without actually creating any, I'll say, aggro.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good word. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. All right, that's great. We've had a great chat about the meaning, Damien. So let's have a short break here, and when we come back, we'll talk about the steps you took to become a special forces operator and a how not to die guy. So, Damien, how do you become a special services operator and or a instructor for defending yourself?
Those are good questions. I'll start with the second one first again, like I did in the others. Learning how to become an instructor in unarmed combat is a straightforward process, but it will require a lot of mental fortitude. I trained with the Todd group in Dunedin, and he's one of about 5 people in the world that were at that level. Now there's a few more people because you've got veterans of high-level Delta Force, 13-6, and other Special Forces units that have come out of that after 20 years in the military and teaching this. So there's civilians that instruct this as well as Special Forces guys, but go to a reputable unarmed and armed combat school. My one happens to be in New Zealand, and do the training and pass the tests. Those tests, you're not given the qualifications. They're as hard as the military qualification tests and special forces qualification tests. And in fact, there's a lot of injuries that occur on those as well. So go to a reputable school. Don't learn martial arts. It's got nothing to do with self-defense. It's a beautiful sport. Not knocking them. It's not self-defense. Self-defense includes a lot more than just kicking someone or choking someone out. And then practice it. The only reason I got an instructing, Paul, was because I'd done the course and I wanted to keep those skills up. And I knew that training my friends would help that. And my comprehension was raised. When you teach, you need to know more. So my comprehension was raised around it. The second part, becoming a special forces operator, join the military, I would suggest. No, actually, if I go back a stage, if you're here in Western Australia and you want to become a special forces operator, go to the Mill Gym. The Mill Gym is run by former Commando and SAS which is the Australian SAS operators, and they have current operators there as well. And they have a 100% success rate. It sounds like an ad for them. It should be. They got a lot of respect from me. They got a 100% success rate for anybody that has tried out for those units that's been through their courses, which is brilliant. That's a great start if you're here in Western Australia. It requires a high level of personal fitness and a high level of personal discipline. Research and find out from current operators what the selection course entails and train for it. Train smart, get training programs from people that have been there and done it. Don't get a training program from a personal trainer. Don't get a training program from some wannabe. And I say wannabe, someone that has wanted to do that and failed. Get a training program from someone that's been there and done it, and train and make it your sole focus. And I wish you all the best if you're thinking about doing that and you're listening to it.
Right, fantastic. You made it almost sound simple.
Yeah, you just got to put your mind to it, I guess. The only other thing I can suggest is be prepared to put your body on the line. Now that is an overused term. I know that from sports commentary. But what I mean by that is be prepared to either die or pass. And again, Nick Caldwell he's got a great video. They run they run 24-hour courses at their complex. If you're still standing on your feet, you can still keep going. If you are still upright and vertical, you can still keep going. If you can talk, you can still keep going. It's when you're horizontal and unconscious that you're done. So be prepared to finish it or die. That's my overarching suggestion if you're going to go and try and do a selection course.
Yep, that sounds like a good measure to test yourself by.
It is testing yourself, Paul. It is. It's also a heartbreaker. That will break your heart if you don't pass, and that's what you thought you were good enough to be. But it's a true test of what's inside you.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, did I hear somewhere or read somewhere that when you think you're done, you've done about 40% of what you're capable of doing?
Yeah, there's percentages. I don't know how they do it, how they rate it, and the psychologists and the directing staff and the CEO, they're the same. They look at the lineup at the start and they just don't know who's going to make it through. There's a gross way of picking it, but yeah, your body can do 80% more than you think it's capable of.
So, with a training plan, I imagine that you don't just front up at the, is it Millie Gym, did you say?
The Mill Gym, so the
The Mill
Mill
Gym?
Gym. I'm sorry about the accent, but that's how we talk in New Zealand.
That's right. But uh, I don't reckon I'm ready to go there. I'd need to do quite a bit of work to get myself ready because I'd probably break at pull a muscle or do something crazy straight up. So you want to be somewhere doing some pretty continuous, I imagine, physical activity.
Look, you'd think so, but those guys will take you from zero all the way up in a safe way. It may take longer. So if you're turning up and you haven't run for a few months, it's going to take you longer. Or if you turn up and you can pass some of those tests that I already said, then you're at a higher level. You just slot in a different level. But no, those guys will take you safely through. and you'll find out if you're capable.
So thanks, Damian. It's great to hear how you worked your way through to become a Special Forces operator, a self-defence teacher, and creating How Not to Die guy. Thank you for sharing your experience. And from all Forest.chat listeners, we wish you all the best in your future endeavours.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
A pleasure. You've been listening to Forest.chat, where we talk about individual endeavour in Western Australia, what it takes, what it means, and how you do it. I'm your host, Paul Vandermeer, and in today's episode, we talked with Damian Porter about being a Special Forces operator, self-defence teacher, and creating How Not to Die guy. Remember, there are 4 ways you can get involved with Forest.chat. Share the domain Forest.chat with your friends and family and people you meet. Listen to the published podcast at forest.chat/episodes. Book an interview at forest.chat/interview. Book an advert at forest.chat/advert. I'm looking forward to joining you with our next interview. Until next time, enjoy making it happen.